Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Kassandra and this is another coffee chat video where I get to just sit down with you guys, answer some of your questions, and talk about topics that I care about. So this week's video is not yoga related. This is all about productivity. Now, productivity is something that I think about a lot and something that is very, very important in my life. Just because I have quite of a busy schedule, and I do not think busyness is like a badge of honor. It's not something that I, show off on or brag about, because busyness can be really challenging and can really wear you down. However, being productive is something that I think is a strong suit of mine. So it is a part of my personality that I appreciate because it means that I get things done very quickly. And today I'm going to take you through the top 8 productivity tips that I have. Of course, I am self-employed, and productivity is really important when you work for yourself because there's no one else pushing you forward other than you. So if something doesn't get done, it's not like there are other coworkers to kind of take up the slack. It's not like there's a boss who's going to remind you of your deadlines. It's really all up to you. So first thing, my biggest tip, and this is something that I do every single day, is to start the day by making a brand new to-do list. I know there are fancy apps now that help you keep track of tasks and make lists, and if that works for you, that's awesome. But for me, it's just pen and paper. Every single morning, I find a brand new page in whatever journal I'm using at that time, whatever little workbook that I have, and I make a to-do list of everything I can think of that I need to get done, not just for the day, but for the near future. So I'll go over the previous day's to-do list, and whatever was not crossed off obviously gets added onto that day's to-do list, as well as anything else that I can think of that maybe wasn't on the list before then. So that to me is really satisfying. There's something really satisfying about adding a check mark and striking things out, and just, I don't know, knowing that you've done something and that you can now move on to the next thing is really helpful, and that keeps me on track. Because sometimes if I am overwhelmed and I feel like there's too much on my mind, that's the number one thing that makes me unproductive. If I get too stressed or too anxious, my gut reaction is to do nothing and to procrastinate and to avoid my tasks. So writing things down is one way that I feel like I can control what I have to do and it doesn't seem so overwhelming. So I don't know, it might not work for you, but it certainly does work for me. Tip number 2 is that once you have those items on the list, don't just leave them there. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten is to put your to-do lists in your calendar. So I could survive work-wise with just my Google Calendar and whatever journal I'm using at the time with my to-do list. My Google Calendar is kind of crazy. It's color-coded to the extreme, and it looks extremely busy to someone who's not used to it. I know my now husband, Anthony, whenever he looks at it, he gets super overwhelmed, but for me, it makes me feel so calm and so in control. But there is something amazing about taking all of the things that you wrote on your to-do list and actually assigning a date to them. Because again, when you have a really long to-do list, looking at it can be really scary, really overwhelming, and you start to feel like, oh, there's no way you're ever going to be able to get it done. So if you can identify the things that you're going to do today, the ones tomorrow, the ones next week, all of a sudden, you know exactly what needs to be done and there's no ambiguity over it. So for me, putting an action around the item, put it in your calendar, assign a date to it, that has been a huge boost in my productivity and also my creativity overall. The third thing, okay, when you're looking at your to-do list, or when you just know that you have a lot of things that you need to do or that you should be doing, it can be daunting. So my thing that I do all the time is I start with the shortest and easiest task first. So I go from shortest or easiest to longest and hardest. The key reason for this is that confidence is buildable. And it might seem strange to talk about confidence when we're talking about productivity, but to me, the two really are linked, because when I'm feeling bad about myself or down on myself, I get overwhelmed more, I get a little bit more stress and anxiety, and I feel like maybe I'm not up to the task of doing all the things that I know I need to do. So when you do like even just the smallest, simplest, easiest thing on your list, you get that satisfying feeling of like crossing it off and moving it out, and all of a sudden you have like a little boost of creativity, of productivity, and of confidence, and you feel ready to tackle something a little bit harder. Whereas first thing in the morning, starting with like the hardest, longest task is so frustrating to me, because I'm like, oh, it'll take me all day to do that, and then I'll still have 20 items that I haven't gotten to yet. So I'd rather knock them all down and then get to the hardest, longest thing towards the end. Again, this might not work for you, but to me, it really, really works. And so I don't know if you guys watch The Office, but I'm a big Office fan, and this tip is actually like reflected in an episode. Like when they go, this is so stupid that I'm bringing this up, but when they go and they start the Michael Scott Paper Company, and Michael gets like really overwhelmed with all the things that they have to do today, Pam actually does this little trick where she's like, okay, get dressed, we did it. This, make breakfast, nice, we did it. We already did 2 things today. And all of a sudden, Michael has more confidence and he's able to go out and do the harder things. So I can't believe I just like gave an Office example to these productivity tips, but it just goes to show that I do think this tip works. Confidence is buildable, and you want to use that to your advantage. Tip number 4 for productivity is to have a routine. I know routines can be a little boring. I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with routine, whereas when I don't have one, I feel stressed and I want my routine. And then when I'm right in the thick of my routine, I get bored and restless and I want to throw it out the window. So listen, I don't know, it's just my nature. I go back and forth a lot in extremes, but I know that I am my most productive when I do have a set work routine. This is especially important, I think, in my opinion, if you are self-employed or if you are an entrepreneur. Having some kind of structure around your work hours or around your projects and the way that you operate best makes a big difference. So I know for me, for example, I am my most productive in the morning. So from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. is when I get the most of my work done. I can do 2 or 3 times as much more in those few hours in the morning than I can in the entire rest of the day. I don't know why, it's just as the day goes on, my brain gets foggy. So I make sure that I do get up earlier, even though I would love to sleep in. I know that it's worth it for me to get up and do those few hours of work, because then I can actually sometimes take the afternoon off. Whereas if I sleep in and decide I'll just work later during the night, I barely get anything done just because my brain just doesn't seem to operate well that way. It's not good for me. It doesn't work out. So you need to really know what your own natural rhythms are, what you prefer, and how you work your best. So have some kind of routine and schedule that makes sense to you. And try to follow it as much as possible. Tip number 5, I struggle with this one. So this is kind of like a do as I say and not as I do, because this is the hardest one for me, but one that works very well, is to have a set amount of time dedicated to emails. I have this horrible habit that I'm breaking, but I kind of go back to it without even realizing sometimes, where when I'm working on my computer, I'll have like my email tab open all the time. So every time a new email comes up, I see it, or sometimes my phone will alert me when I have a new email, or the pop-up on my computer will let me know when an email comes in, and it's very tempting for me to go and read it right away and address it right away, but that is such a big time sucker and energy sucker. So as much as possible, I try to give myself like 1 to 2 hours a day, because I get a lot of emails dedicated to emails and an administrative work of that sort. Just because otherwise, if I'm checking them all the time, it breaks up my workflow of the other tasks that I've been doing, and it's like, I don't know, it drains my energy also. And emails, sometimes you think, oh, it's just going to take a minute, but all of a sudden you've been drafting this stupid email for 23 minutes because you're erasing and writing it all again and doing research, or all of a sudden your phone rings, or oh no, you're on social media, or oh, you opened a new tab. Anyway, it doesn't work for me. So I really, really try to have a set schedule for my emails. Usually I'll do it like around lunchtime, as my productivity winds down, I tackle my emails and then I do whatever I can during the rest of the day. So I'm not consistent with it, but when I do it, I notice a huge spike in my productivity. Okay, number six. Number six is a little weird, and I don't know if I'm the only person in the world who does this, but I send myself emails all the time. I find it's a huge way to boost my productivity. So if you are self-employed, if you're an artist, if you're a creative type, if you are an entrepreneur, you might get, like me, ideas all the time. Or maybe all the time you're remembering things that you have to do, or you're getting an inspiration for a new project or whatever, right? And I find that if all of this stuff is in my head, it really blocks the flow of my creativity and of my productivity. So I try to be I try not to let work rule my life by working all day, all night, all weekends. I try to give roughly a 9 to 5, although it's 8 to 4, whatever, 8 to 6 usually actually is mostly what it is. But during those off hours in the weekends and evenings, although I do kind of work weekends, those times where I'm meant to not work, if I do get an idea, if I do think of something, I don't want it to linger in my brain for too long and affect the rest of my life, which has nothing to do with work. So I send myself emails all the time, and I find that the act of writing it down, sending it to myself is okay, I don't need to think about it anymore, so that the next day when I am checking my emails, I'm reminded of those to-do things that I want to do or those ideas, and I can add it to my to-do list and add it to my calendar. So I don't know, it just really works for me. I send myself emails whenever I have ideas. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes, most of the time actually, the next day I read the email and I'm like, that was a terrible idea. I'm not doing that. But at least I get it out of my head so that I can focus on other things and not get too bogged down with this impulse thing that I want to do. Number 7, say no. If you're going to be productive, you are going to have to learn to say no to a lot of stuff. I'm very much guilty of saying yes to things, especially when they're in the future, because I figure in the future I'm gonna want to do it, but then that time comes and I'm busy, I'm swamped, I can't. This year especially, I find that I've gotten a lot more realistic with my time. I used to just overload myself, and I do still catch myself doing that, but I take on new projects without my previous projects being completed, and I'm really making a conscious effort to stopping that, which means that even though I have a great new idea for a product or a project or something that I want to do, even though I'm feeling inspired or even though a great opportunity is coming my way, I really take the time to consider it, and I now know if I say yes to something, it means I'm saying no to something else that's already going on in my life. I mean, your life is like a pie chart, and work is just one slice of that pie. There's also your relationships, your family, your health, your hobbies. There's a lot, right? There's a lot that we juggle in life, not just work. So if I say yes to one thing, that means that I have to say no to something else. And even if we're just staying in the realm of work, I know that the slice of pie of my work, it can only get so big, and I can only be juggling so many things at the same time. So I'm very realistic now. I say no a ton to new collaborations, to new offers, to new ideas, to going out. I just say no a lot, but that means I'm saying yes to other things that are priority to me. So projects that I'm already working on, relationships that I'm really thriving in right now, things that matter to me right now that I've committed to, I make sure that they stay priority. So sometimes I'll take on things and I think I can juggle it all, but I really can't, and I do a big disservice to myself, and my productivity goes way, 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 way down just because, you can't say yes to everything. I wish I could. I wish I could do absolutely everything in the world. I'm seeing this a lot trying to plan, retreats or trainings and travel. It's really hard. If I travel more, that means I can't do as much at home. That means I can't do as much online. So something's got to give. So learning to say no is one way that I'm able to stay really productive in all that I do. Okay, tip number 8 for productivity might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but to me, one of the greatest tips that I have, what keeps me productive, is that I lead a very full life. This just This doesn't just mean that I am busy work-wise, but I lead a very full life in my personal life as well as in my work life. I really thrive on having a full calendar. The more space I seem to have, like you would think that if I had a full week that I could only work dedicated to working on one thing, you would think that I would get it done really quickly because I would have no distractions, but I'm not like that. I'm very much someone who thrives on pressure. I work really well under pressure, and I work really well under tight deadlines. This is a part of my personality that I used to fight and that I used to resist, but it's who I am, and now I'm using it to my advantage. So, I think back of when I used to be in school, and I'm not advocating this, but never in my life, oh God, like I don't know if I should even say this, but it's the truth. Never in my life have I studied for something more than one day before the exam. I said it. High school, college, university, I always was the kind of person who did things the night before. And listen, I was good in school. Like, my brain works well this way. I work well under pressure. This is how I operate. So for me, if I had one full week where I only had one thing to do, I can tell you, I would wait until the last day to do it. And, the other 6 days would kind of be boring, like wasted time. So for me, having fullness in my schedule, fullness meaning, half of my schedule being events that I want to enjoy with my friends, things that I want to do with my family, with my husband, things with my pets, things that I'm doing for my own personal growth and care. Like, those are important, and I schedule those in my calendar, and I put as much importance on the things I want to do for fun in my personal life as I do on the work things that, make me money and things like that. So living a full life is one way that I stay productive. Now, this tip is not going to work if you don't have the same personality as me. Some people need a lot of space around certain tasks in order to accomplish those tasks well and in a timely manner. But if you are like me and you do really well under pressure and really well with deadlines, and you enjoy having a full schedule, a full life, and a full day, then this is going to work well for you. I am my most productive when I'm busy. And busy is not like a badge of honor that I wear. It's not like, sometimes I think people talk about busyness and they're like little martyrs about it. They use it to get sympathy or pity or something. And I really don't see busyness that way. Like, for me, busyness is fullness. So of course there's a line and you can get too busy. But for me, having a full calendar, living a full life, having things to look forward to helps, and it makes me want to get things done because I am looking forward to the things I'll need to get done in the future. So take it or leave it. These are my top 8 productivity tips, productivity for work, productivity for life, in all areas. This is what I do, what works for me. These are tips that I've learned through trial and error, and I would love to know from you guys, what works the best for you, and share them down below in the description box, in the comments down below. And if you haven't watched these coffee chats before, definitely click somewhere on the side here for other videos that you can watch. I think a really good way to follow this up would be to watch my top tips for overall health. So physical, mental, and emotional health. What I do to just kind of stay balanced and sane throughout the midst of this chaos of productivity. All right, thank you so much, guys. Please subscribe to my channel, and I hope to chat with you again soon.